Fallout 4 has a ton of different enemies. You could be taking on raiders, to gunners, to even some different creatures that you can find among the Commonwealth, even things like zombies through modding. But what you might not have known is it actually also has the supernatural. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at one of the scariest locations in Fallout 4, a place that actually kind of breaks some of the limits otherwise set by the game, where you can find out about a group of people that were tormented and manipulated by an entity that is basically a higher power than the rest of us. As some of you guys already know, I'm talking about Dunwich Borers. This is a location on the northeast side of the Commonwealth. As you stumble upon it, it might just kind of seem like another mining spot, a quarry trying to make its money before the bombs did drop, but in fact there's actually going to be a bunch of raiders there, and if you do peel back the surface, you could find some pretty terrible things that have gone on here. So as you watch this, you may be thinking to yourself, this sounds really familiar. I feel like I've experienced this before. Well, actually the Dunwich are a multi-game spanning legacy. They did have their very own Dunwich building in Fallout 3 that had its own deep and terrifying story. As you explore that location, you'll quickly learn this isn't a company just wanting to make a profit. Their motives are much deeper and more sinister, and they're actually trying to uncover something very dark. But that is a tale for another video. It's just important to preface this as we do know a lot about this company already. Another side note, a lot of this is inspired by H.P. Lovecraft. This is a horror fiction author very famous for some of his different works, including Dunwich Horrors. Interesting enough, the location we're looking at today is Dunwich Borers. But that's enough of talking about the backstory behind this location. Now let's actually look at how it appears in Fallout 4. As you do approach again, you'll find a bunch of raiders around the area. There's going to be a lot to kill. But as you clear out some of the top level raiders, you actually may stumble upon a location known as Hugo's Hole. Upon walking up to it, you may hear a loud gunshot. Not that out of the blue, you did just take on a massive army of raiders, but as you get closer, you'll find a bunch of signs telling you to turn away, as well as a ton of traps and radiation. Upon entering the location itself, you'll actually find a dead body and a gun. That is the body of Hugo, and as you'll quickly learn, Hugo just took his own life. That was the gunshot we heard previously. There's not a ton of loot or anything there, but one holotape that is of interest.
Guys don't bother me anymore. That's good. I think it's... What was that? Can't they read the signs? I think it's time I go back inside the quarry. It's been too long. No, I can't. The guys would never let me in. I could kill them all. No, that wouldn't be what it would want. It's time to lay down. Yes, of course. It's next to my bed. I will. It's loaded.
Listening to it, it quickly becomes abundant that Hugo may have been talking to somebody, but now you entering this location through the only entrance with no foreseeable exits, you'll come to realize that there's nobody else there. It also seems like whoever Hugo was communicating with told him to kill himself, as they do motion to the gun and Hugo identifies its location. Even beyond all that, the most terrifying aspect of this seems like we may have been the cause of Hugo's suicide. Towards the beginning, you could hear how he says somebody else is coming around and aren't they listening to the signs? And then of course, as you approach the location, you do hear that gunshot. You are that person approaching those signs and not turning back. So whatever this higher power was that was communicating with Hugo may have told him to kill himself as a result of our presence. Was this to hide information? Was it to just prevent us from communicating with Hugo? Or maybe something a bit darker? One other notable thing is the hazmat suit in Hugo's location. It's in pretty pristine condition and kind of stands out of all the other loot available. As you work your way into the quarry, you're going to find something quite disturbing in the middle. There's a cage of sorts with bodies in it, and below it a fire pit. Some of these are skeletons seemingly here for much longer, while other ones are still fresh and only newly dead. As well as if you look at the fire pit, it is smoking. It almost looks as if we may have disturbed this process also. Intriguing, but raiders do some fucked up things. Is this just another form of sacrifice, maybe a dirty pleasure of theirs? Well, as we progress further into the quarry and actually enter into it itself, we will find out more about all of this. Upon entering, you're going to find some more raiders, just kind of doing their own thing, maybe doing some mining of sorts. But beyond all that, you're also going to find some terminals. This is really going to be where you find the depths of this location and the horrors behind it. So from here, we find a few different messages. First, some from Bob Swanson. This is going to be like the foreman or manager of this individual location, that being Terminal 1. This is kind of his section and his region. You also find out from this that he's a really good manager. He's been incident 3 for 93 days, that meaning no deaths, despite many of the other terminals having quite a few different incidents and pretty regular deaths. this. It seems like management is also addressing this. They do send a few emails here talking about how they have support beams as well as railings, although they don't want to spend a ton of money on these, so they kind of cheap out on the support beams and railings, only including them where they want or really where they deem appropriate. And at the same time, a lot of the railings are rusted and old. They only get inspected once every 6 months. And then finally, on one of the support beam things, something that's interesting is they do mention how there's kind of rumblings going on, and you are in a quarry, so that's to be expected to a certain point, and they say that you should just kind of wait it out, and if everything goes away, just ignore it. This is interesting because as you yourself traverse through this quarry, you'll see rumblings happening quite a few times. After passing through this terminal, you'll actually find a little cage. You're going to find a small girl in there, which you can free. There's no dialogue or anything like that. You'll just let her go and she'll run away. Pretty freaking spooky. You have to imagine this is done by those raiders, the same people that were burning those bodies earlier on, and is this somehow all connected? Definitely seems like it might be. As you progress, you'll find some more raiders just wandering about until you get to Terminal 2. From here, you find out a few other things. The manager here is also very talented, definitely cut out for the job, as he did just increase production by 5%, but things aren't nearly as clear-cut here. There's been a few more deaths at this location, and he's actually complaining how there's been a lot of foot traffic between Terminal 2 and Terminal 3. Basically, people trying to get to Terminal 3 have been interrupting the work of Terminal 2, and he really hopes this is resolved shortly. At all of the different terminals here, you also find out about 2 events that management has been inviting everyone to. First and foremost is a happy hour. Basically, this is going to take place where everyone can invite their families, drink booze, but the cost of that's actually going to come out of their paycheck. Definitely not a company I would want to work for. And then you also discover there is an annual picnic where it's a similar thing, except this time they have an Assaultron there, so nothing bad happens like last year. This is very ominous, and we don't necessarily find out what happens last year, but you could definitely infer that something quite horrible did happen. And another thing you'll find at all of these different terminals is all of these managers are invited to urgently report to Station 4. As you continue on, you'll find a similar theme, a few enemies here and there until you get to the next terminal. This one's going to be next to a massive drop and has been dubbed the Pit as a result. There's also going to be one named NPC here. The terminal itself contains a lot of the same kind of information we've been seeing at the previous. Concerned about the railings, especially at this point, and someone died last week because, well, there's a giant fall here. And even beyond all that, there is another invitation for this manager to also report to Terminal 4. As you traverse down the stairs and find those raiders that you hopefully just killed, you're going to notice one again is named. This guy's going to be named Bedlam. Basically, he is the raider leader, the captain of all of those raider inhabitants you have found here. He's denoted by some really spooky markings on his face and actually has his own terminal. From there, you could find these raiders basically moved in and continued a lot of the work that was going on. But as they did exhaust some of the quarry reserves, they actually had to continue to move deeper and deeper into the tunnels. He reports how there was a ghoul problem near Terminal 4, and although he sent a bunch of people to deal with it, they never turned up. So now he himself, as the boss, has to deal with this problem. The next terminal entry is quite frightening. It basically just says, "I'm safe in the light," repeated over and over, like somebody that has gone mad. This, coupled with the fact that he had that weird face paint, definitely seems like something must have gone on and happened to this guy as he did go to Terminal 4. On the way to Terminal 4, things get a bit more spooky. You're going to start hearing additional sounds to those typical grumblings that you were hearing throughout the rest of the quarry. And even further, there's kind of a weird gas among the air. Things look a little bit different, and if you accidentally throw a grenade, it'll all explode and go up in flames. Even beyond that, you're going to find a mixture of dead raider bodies as well as some dead ghoul bodies and even some living ghouls. You'll also find a few skeletons of workers that all seem to have died mid-work. They have a shovel in their hand, a hard hat on. It doesn't seem like they put up much of a fight at all. And as you progress, things definitely start to get a bit spookier. There's a dense fog or dust gas of some kind that really limits your visibility even with a flashlight. From time to time, you'll find a circuit breaker that will turn on a bunch of lights, but at the same time alert all of the ghouls to your location and they'll run at you. Could this be that same safe light that we did hear about a bit earlier? As you progress onward, you'll find a lot of the same. Various traps, dead ghouls, as well as some living ones that are trying to kill you. There will be one point where you reach a door. Rather than saying open, it'll actually say activate. As you click on this door, you're going to be taken back, a flashback that overwhelms you. You're going to see some of the terrain change, as well as there's actually some workers that can be heard up ahead. This will quickly end, and as you progress through, you'll actually see a bunch of ghouls pop up. This seems to be foreshadowing that those workers have now turned into these very ghouls that you have been fighting. Perhaps this has been going on throughout the whole quarry, and all these different ghouls you were killing and finding dead were actually old employees of Dunwick LLC. From this point forward, you won't see any more raiders. Now you're just finding ghouls, and as you turn on the light, they will all rush you until you finally stumble upon Terminal 4. This is the fabled terminal that all of these different department heads or managers were called to by management. At this terminal, you'll see a lot of the same, as well as there'll actually be an audio tape that you can play.
Tim Schutz here. No suspicions were raised when the new equipment was brought in the other day. crew at Station 4 are still under the impression that we are setting up a new station beyond this area. The standing crew you hired are convincing enough. However, do worry about the project managers at the other stations, especially Bob at Station 1. We all know he takes his job very seriously. His bullet point updates bug the hell out of me. My gut tells me he'll figure out something's going on down here sooner rather than later. Please advise.
That tape was of Tim Suits, the last of the station managers. He's actually in on whatever alternate plans the management have had, and he actually raises a few concerns. Some of the managers are growing wary, as well as Bob specifically has been causing quite a problem and not really doing his part. He's not keeping his mouth shut, and he's kind of witty, so he might figure things out. As you progress forward, you're going to have another flashback, this one a lot scarier. There's going to be one man standing at an altar and a bunch of people chained up on their knees worshiping him. As it does quickly end, you're going to have a bunch of ghouls rush at you. After you finish them off, you come to realize that these are all of the managers. As well, there's another holotape, this time from management.
Tim, good job on keeping things under wraps. We've taken your advice and have asked the other project managers to meet you at Station 4. Stall them if they arrive before we get there. They haven't been told anything. We are very close to accomplishing our goal. Please be patient, and you will be rewarded in time.
This holotape acknowledges the concerns raised by Tim previously. Management feels the solution is to invite all of the managers down to Terminal 4 and take care of them once and for all. It seems like that is the morbid reality you just stumbled upon. Was that flashback all of those managers being forced to worship Tim? Well, no, because actually Tim's the body you get the holotape off of. He too has died here and been turned into a ghoul. But in the center of this all is a very deep cavern. These guys have been digging for something. They talk about all this equipment passing through. So what the hell's down there? As you travel down this very spooky cavern, you're going to find a little subsection that'll have a few mini nukes, as well as a legendary weapon, that known as Krem's Tooth. This looks like a weapon that is meant to cause pain. The legendary effect does not seem like anything pleasant, and just the overall aesthetic of it seems like something that may have been sacrificial. Finally, as you travel down to the deepest part of the cavern, you see a giant metal head. From there, you can travel back up and find a side entrance out. This seems to be the side entrance that Tim did have to get to Terminal 4 without having to worry about alerting all the others to his alternate plans that were created by management. And yeah, that's the story of Dunwich Borers. Wait, so what the hell happened here? So let's rewind a little bit so I can explain what was going on here. So Dunwich LLC, having a creepy history of the past, noticed something peculiar about this location, Dunwich Borers. There is a massive robot under the location itself. They wanted that. They wanted to raise up the shrine. Something interesting as you find all these different elements of that shrine is it actually looks like it's buried here. It doesn't look like they were creating it, but actually undigging it. It seems like they didn't actually care about all of the marble and selling the aspects of the quarry, but in fact they wanted to get to a city that was down there, as well as you do have this giant metal head. Along the way, they were making a ton of sacrifices. That's where you get the cheap railings and the company's seemingly unwillingness to fix many of these problems. The first manager, Bob, was such a big issue because nobody was dying. He wasn't creating bodies for them to sacrifice. Even beyond all that, that legendary weapon we did find does seem like it was used in sacrifice, and perhaps that's what was being used at the altar earlier. Even beyond all that, those two major parties or events, the happy hour as well as the company picnic, were sources of fresh bodies and frankly fresh meat for the company itself to sacrifice to this higher being. Now, it's not really clear if that big robot is the being itself, or perhaps there's just a spiritual being that controls the robot also, but it definitely seems like Dunwich LLC knew about this and they wanted to uncover it. Perhaps this being possessed them or told them what to do, similar to what happened with Hugo. So then from there, they continue to try and uncover this city, or just rather the altar itself, as well as actually uncover this being. They proceed to use their own workers as sacrifice, as well as parts of their families. That explains why they had the Assaultron there. Perhaps something really bad happened where they killed off a few of them and didn't want anything getting out of hand this time. It's not really clear what turned everyone into ghouls or ended this operation, but it could have been as simple as the bombs dropped, foiling the plans of all the people there, as well as Dunwich LLC, as many of them did die, but not without turning many of them into ghouls in the process. Later on, these group of raiders do stumble upon the same location. This entity or being takes control of them also, but controls one more than all the others. That's going to be Hugo. From there, the raiders begin the same process, working their way deeper into the mine, as well as making sacrifices along the way. That's all those bodies we found on the outside, as well as that girl in the cage on the inside. She was to be sacrificed. And even beyond all that, that explains why that raider leader did become possessed. And finally, it seems like Hugo may have been the one to actually find the deity himself. The rest of the raiders, although entering into the quarry, were just kind of doing regular work. Hugo had a hazmat suit in his little hole there. The only one that really could have survived that that was him, because there is a massive amount of radiation in that water as well as 2 mini nukes placed down there. Perhaps he got the closest to that being, and the seemingly insane nature of him made the rest of the raiders kick him out, but he still had this compulsion to go back in. So yeah, that's the spookiest location in Fallout 4. This was definitely a long video. It took a lot of work and just trying to put my own interpretation on it. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed. I would love to make more videos like this in the future. I know it's not really my typical style, but is it something you would want to see more of? As always, again, and thank you for watching. I do hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you all next time. Later.